ఒక 3 నిమిషాలు స్టార్ట్ చేద్దాం సార్.
ఓకే.
सुखदेव जी.
जी, गुड इवनिंग. जय भीम सर. जय भीम सर.
कैसे है सर?
ठीक है जी, ठीक है.
बेटी है इधर, चले गए?
हाँ, बेटी आजकल बेंगलोर है.
इंडिया में है?
हाँ, इंडिया में.
कैसे हालत हिमाचल का?
हाँ, हिमाचल अभी तो एक हफ्ते से कोई है नहीं बारिश वगैरह, तो थोड़ा ठीक है, सुधरा है. तो हम भी थोड़ा अपना प्लान कर रहे थे, थोड़ा बहुत अक्टूबर में कुछ जो हमने प्लान विधानसभा का एजेंडा उस पर थोड़ा बात करते हैं.
एक बार मिनिस्टर से मिले तो क्या मालूम हो जाएगा?
हाँ, आपसे मालूम हो जाएगा
क्या सोच रहे हैं वो लोग.
हाँ, वो देखना पड़ेगा.
चंद्र साहब कहाँ है आजकल?
हाँ, चंद्र साहब धर्मशाला में थे. चंबा जाना था उन्होंने, मेरी की बात नहीं हुई 2 दिन से. तो था धर्मशाला में ही होंगे. साथी अभी कम जुड़े हमारे, 10 हो गए. मैंने बहुत लोगों को भेजते हैं इनवाइट, परंतु आज तो
लोग हम भेज रहे हैं कि यूट्यूब में आ रहे हैं, मगर नहीं मालूम है, मगर तो कर रहे हैं. हम क्या करेंगे,
चलो वो तो कर
हमारा काम हम करना पड़ेगा. महेंद्र कुमार जी. महेंद्र कुमार जी.
सर जय भीम.
हाउ आर यू?
आई एम फाइन सर, थैंक यू.
देव कुमार.
జేవి మన
ఎట్లా ఉన్నారు?
బాగున్నా.
Okay, we can start. सुखदेव जी. सुखदेव जी, we can start.
हाँ, शुरू कर देते हैं. ठीक है.
Okay. तो आज तो टॉपिक यही है, वो द जर्नी ऑफ मेकिंग द इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. Today's speaker, I think it's a very special speaker because he's an academician, he's a social activist, he's a rights activist. Now he is heading one political party, Telangana Janasamti. He was a chairman of Telangana JAC, Joint Action Committee. I proud to say I was work with him as a co-chairman. We have a 30 years, I think, above 30 years together working in so many movements, issues. He was a political scientist. He joined assistant professor in 1981. Then he became a professor 2006. He studied his degree, all those in Warangal. and he MA from Usman University, MPhil from Jawaharlal Nehru University, PhD also Usman University. Apart from that, he wrote so many books, wrote so many papers in Telugu, in English, and he attended many conferences, national, international conferences, and local conferences. He is well known in Telangana, and not only Telangana, but he known to rights activists in all over India. Another facet, he was a editor of rights magazine Svecha. Then he studied mainly agriculture relations, agriculture changes, then even drought area, farmer suicides, so many issues he raised. He played became a pioneer, a great role in the Telangana state movement. And then he sacrificed so many things. Now he got, he's going to have a MLC, Member of Legislative Council, Telangana. Every day, every minute, he's working with the people. So many organizations working with him. So many. Every day, he will meeting with so many organizations with issues. Thank you, sir. Welcome to this conference. This is the I think 60. 65, 65th lecture, sir. Sir, we have only 10 lectures is remain. Sir, this is a unique lecture series. I think before not yet anybody organized. I think without any break, what is the planning? Previously we organized every week 2 lectures. Now we are going to every week 1 lecture. It will goes to up to 26th January. 25th, 26th January, we are going to have a national conclave, constitution conclave. We are inviting all lectures, scholars. They give a lecture in the series. So many, 10 to 15 people, they from abroad. Then all over India, they are participating in this. So many people are every day. We are going to have a put in YouTube. Then we are going to have a publication also in with all 75 lectures. Sir, this is the introduction. This lecture started by our beloved retired Supreme Court Justice Sudarshan Reddy. Then now is the 65th lecture. I think we only 10 lectures remain. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much accepting our invitation and enlighten to our people. And in future also it will be in the YouTube and it will be in the print. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. I compliment the organizers for taking up this program. It is a difficult task to organize 70 lecture series according to a time schedule.
75, sir.
75.
75
planning to
Indian
have.
Constitution, 75 lectures. That is the
75.
idea.
Now is 60. I am giving the 65th lecture, and hereafter 10 more lectures will also be held. That is a great thing to know. And I am very happy that you have sustained it so long and planning to conclude it with a big bang. Today, you may have already heard about the Constitution, so many dimensions and so many aspects of the Constitution. I think, what I am going to say, you may have already heard. So I can't really, perhaps I would not be saying anything new, but definitely whatever little I have learnt, and I would like to present before you and before this important group. I wanted to say that, the I used to teach Indian Constitution to degree students and also to the post graduation students. Our textbooks always say that this wonderful constitution, long constitution, is written by borrowing many elements from various constitutions. And they say it is a continuation of 1935 Act, and there is nothing new about it. This is what really surprised me, and also sometimes I used to feel bad because we are simply continuing the 1935 Act. What is so new about it? While talking about these issues, our mentor Kannabiran, civil rights movement leader, once he said, that is a very wrong way of looking at the Indian Constitution. He said, this Constitution is different from what the British have given us. The Britishers have given us an authoritarian regime. Now we have overthrown that and established a democratic government. So the Constitution of India is radically different from what we have, different from the laws that the British have enacted, the kind of um, India acts framing the governments during the colonial period. So after that, I realized that the Constitution cannot be understood by merely looking at the law, by merely looking at the legal framework within the Constitution. After all, constitutions don't survive just because they're written by lawyers in a very beautiful language, and they do not survive if they are written by some extraordinary individuals. They survive because they represent the will of the people. It's only when they represent and reflect the will of the people that an act survives and becomes part of the national life. Today, the Indian Constitution has become a part of the Indian ethos. It is a part of our day-to-day life. If someone makes a plan to amend this Constitution, we all immediately stand up and protest against it. None of us are willing to accept any corrections, any amendment to this. And even Supreme Court said, it can be amended without affecting the basics, only without affecting the basic structure. So therefore, we are not prepared to lose this document. We are all safeguarding it. And if it is today alive, and if it is today still in force, it is because of the people of this country and not because of the rulers of this country. K.R. Narayanan, once addressing a group of people in Hyderabad, he said, this is not simply a document created by a few individuals in the Constituent Assembly. It has grown out of the freedom struggle. And therefore, it is an indelible and inseparable part of the Indian social life and Indian thinking, the frame of government that India has visualized. So I would briefly elaborate this point. We must understand, and we can in fact clearly understand the importance of the Indian Constitution only if we know what happened during the colonial period. The colonial regime was a very oppressive regime. It had two salient features. Number one, it was an authoritarian system. And this authoritarian system was created basically to exploit the Indians. So it has these two separate features. Number one, normally states are controlled by the dominant sections of the society, and thereby they use the state in order to retain their control over the social economic life. This is what history tells us. But in the case of colonial state, it controls the economy because it controls the state. So control over the state has given it hegemonic control over the economy. It uses the state power in order to control the productive forces. It uses the state power in order to use the state resources, the common resources. So the control over the state has given them control over the means of production, control over the economy, control over the resources. In other phases in history, people gained control over the state because they had control over the economy. During the colonial period, it was the other way around. They controlled the economy because they had control over the state. So state control was the key in order to control the economy, in order to exploit the resources. This is what the colonial rulers have realized, and therefore they established firm control over the state machinery. Number two, it was an authoritarian machinery. There was no participation to the local people. It never represented the will of the people. It never gave an access to the local population. It never accommodated the interest of the local people. So that was the nature of the colonial state. As and when the native movements became strong, they have given a limited participation to the native rulers. After 1919 and after the 1927, 1935, they allowed Indians to participate. They conducted elections, but it was always, this participation was always limited. To begin with, they have given Indians the right to, few Indians the right to vote. Not everyone was really a voter. One who had property and studied up to metric and belonging to the upper strata of the society, they alone had access. Property, the land, they alone had access to the, given the voting right, and therefore they alone had access to the state agencies. The others had no power whatsoever to participate in the government. So they were the ones who were given power. However, their authority was limited basically to local government and basically to deal with a few aspects of their day-to-day life, not the economic matters. They had no right whatsoever to decide the economic matters. All decisions regarding the economic matters, the final approval of the British rulers was necessary. So without their final approval, ratification, no decision would come into force. So to that extent, we were kept on the edges and given only limited powers, that too after prolonged agitation. So that was the limited access that we had to the state agencies. Otherwise, the state agencies were fully utilized. Using these powers, they dismantled the native economy and completely restructured it so that it can generate surplus for the rulers in the colonial countries. So serving the colonial masters was the primary objective, and to that extent the state missionary reorganized the economy to suit the colonial interests. So this was the economy, and the Indians criticized it at both the levels. To begin with, they criticized the economic philosophy of the British rulers. They said that Britain was not helping India; it was exploiting and ruthlessly destroying the native, the labor, the whatever wealth that was created by the local people, exploiting, appropriating the wealth created by the local people. They're draining the wealth out of this country, and therefore they offered a strong economic critique of the colonial policy. Number two, they also offered a political philosophical critique of the colonial government. They said the colonial government was an authoritarian system in which Indians had no say, and therefore they said that such government does not have any legitimacy. It is not, it has no right to rule over the Indians. So they have rejected this administration on the grounds that it has no moral authority to rule over the Indian, to preside over over this vast country, and therefore they criticized it and demanded that India must have a say in in deciding its own future, and no external intervention would be tolerated. These were the grounds on which a strong criticism was built against the colonial rulers. And the fight against colonial rulers, as all of you know, has evolved through different phases. Initially, it was through petition and prayer that they appealed to the good sense of India. It has not worked. Then this has given way to militant uprisings. These strong groups, terrorist groups led by people like Bhagat Singh, they were revolting and protesting against the colonial rule. Eventually, after 1919, it turned into a mass movement. And when it became a mass movement, people started participating in it. Gandhi initially played a major role in turning this into a mass movement. After the non-cooperation movement, it turned into a vast majority of the people participated. One thing that the Congress party knew was that the people of this country lived in the villages. So by mobilizing the peasants into the national movement, it can be turned into a vast mass movement, mass upsurge. So they offered an agrarian program. They said land should be given to the tiller, and that the exploitative, the landlord system during the British period must be abolished, and they promised that once India becomes free, that the agrarian relations would be transformed. So with some of these promises, they could mobilize vast majority of people into the Indian national movement. But we must remember that this national movement was not a monolithic movement. It was not a kind of a movement that was firmly and totally under the control of the nationalist leaders, the Gandhi and the other Congress party leaders. Along with the Congress party, a number of other groups have organized protests against the British rulers. There were, to begin with, there was a very powerful trade union movement in India. After 1920s, this trade union movement has emerged. Subsequently, the Communist Party controlled it. And in addition to, though initially people like Ambedkar and also many other anti-caste movements also played a very active role in this trade union movement. Even Phule played a very important role at that point of time. The workers were very few in number, but he also took interest in the workers in the Bombay region. So they were the ones who initiated it, but subsequently the Communist Party took active part in the labor movement in this country. The Congress Party also took part in it, but it was to a considerable extent independent of the national movement. With the expansion of industries, with the expansion of railways in India, the trade union movement also became very powerful, particularly after 1930s. In addition to that, there was also a very strong peasant movement. The peasant movement in Bihar, in Telangana, in Kerala, in many other parts of this country, in Andhra Pradesh, they played a very active role against the Britishers. They demanded that the Jamindari system must be abolished, land should be equitably distributed. And this movement, there were leaders who took very active in this movement. Gandhi also played an active role in Champaran movement. So like that, the peasant movement was also gaining momentum in this country. Thirdly, in addition to these two movements, there was very strong anti-caste movement. Though anti-caste movement had a history, Phule articulated it, but subsequently it was Ambedkar who built it on very firm philosophical grounds. He said domination of one man over the other on the basis of birth in itself is unethical and irrational. And he said no nation can be built on the foundations of the caste system, and therefore mobilized people against this caste system and built and organized vast majority of people, oppressed communities, into this struggle against the caste system. He was against the caste system itself and therefore pleaded for annihilation of the caste system. So these movements were going on. So as the tribals were also actively engaged against the colonial rulers, the tribal movement starting from the Santal rebellions in 1812 itself, they have built, strongly argued against the acquisition of the forest and the land resources in the tribal areas. The British rulers have taken over the forest. They have converted them into a property of the rulers of the British India. They've also taken over the land surrounding these forests. As a consequence, tribals were completely dispossessed and thrown out of their own dwellings, thrown out of, they were completely denied access to the resources on which they relied and on which their livelihoods depended. It is in this context they demanded self-rule and freedom from external intervention in the tribal areas. And these are all some of the very significant movements that have taken place in India. Now, a new ideology also emerged in the 1930s in India. After the First World War, there was a revolution in Russia and a socialist government came into existence. And this socialist government was free from economic depression. While every country in the world suffered as a result of the economic depression, as economic depression has brought about, a suffering to the people. Prices have gone up and people could not buy anything. There was no employment. Agriculture suffered because they could not market their surplus. So this was the context in which the farmers' agitations have also intensified. But for everyone at that point of time, they were surprised by the developments in Soviet Union. On the one hand, Soviet Union has given freedom to its colonies, and on the other hand, there was no economic crisis and people were living happily, and means of production, land and other means of production were equitably distributed to people. So this came as a surprise to everyone, and therefore socialism attracted particularly the educated middle class, and they started studying about it very seriously. There were many variants. While Congress adopted democratic socialism, Fabian socialism, the communists adopted the Marxian socialism, and they tried to practice it and bring about radical changes in India. So all these developments were taking place, and Congress realized, and Congress, remember, is not free from these external influences, always shaped by these developments and shaped by these political movements and influenced by these political movements. Within Congress party, there was a socialist group. In 1934, they called themselves Congress Socialist Party, led by Acharya Narendra Dev and Jayaprakash Narayan. So all these trends were becoming very strong, and day by day, they were gaining momentum, control over the Congress Party. In 1930s, the Nehru, subsequently Subhash Chandra Bose, they became presidents of the party. Now, under the influence of all these movements, one thing became very clear to the Congress party, that people cannot be mobilized by simply giving a call for the overthrow of imperialism. They wanted something more substantial. Realizing this, the Congress party started promising that, Congress freedom does not mean simply a freedom from the control of the colonialism, but also freedom from oppression and freedom from hunger. This is what they have realized, and in the 1931 Karachi session, they passed a resolution for the first time, demanding that when India becomes independent, there will be fundamental rights to everyone. And that resolution on fundamental rights and the economic issues was adopted, and it promised that all fundamental rights would be adopted. All people would be treated as equals, and removal of civil disabilities was also assured. protection of workers' rights was guaranteed, and prohibition of the Vetti Begar was also assured in that resolution. So this was slowly becoming an aspect of the political thinking in India. And around that time, when Motilal wrote his constitution, draft constitution, because India then rejected the Simon Commission, and the Congress gave a call for Simon go back. And as these movements were going on, the Britishers said, and they laughed at India and they said, you can't make a constitution of your own. At that point of time, Motilal, under the chairmanship of Motilal, people belonging to different political parties, they came together and prepared a draft constitution. In that draft constitution, rights were guaranteed for the first time. The rights were also issued to the people of this country. So this was, the atmosphere within which India was slowly, Indian political map was slowly changing, and lot of groups were entering into the freedom movement and hoping that their own living conditions would improve after the India becomes independent. So in this context, 1946, when the Constituent Assembly started, in the month of December, they started meeting and they started debating it. It became very apparent, that this constitution should be different. What is very fundamental to the Indian constitution is, normally most constitutions provide a framework to set up the government. They only provide a framework to establish a government. They try to define the structure of the government and the powers and functions of the various authorities within that constitution, within that setup. So this is what not normally a government, a constitution does. Because of this particular historical context, the Indian constitution, while being drafted, it has clearly decided that the constitution should bring about a social revolution. So that constitution should be seen as a blueprint for future India. This is what everyone wanted the constitution to be. So on the one hand, it becomes a social document. It becomes a social document that offers a blueprint for the future India. And on the other hand, it offers a framework for the setting up of the government. So it does two things simultaneously. And thirdly, it offers rights to the people of the country and limits the powers of the government. And this is the third role that the constitution plays. Most of the constitutions play only the later functions, that they create a government. The constitution protects the individuals from the misuse of authority by the government. So this is what mostly the constitutions do. But Indian constitution is different in the sense that this constitution offers a blueprint for social transformation, a social revolution in this country. So the constitution was expected to bring a social revolution, overthrow the society in which birth gives special privileges. So that society must go and create a new society where individuals would get equal opportunities, and where each individual, irrespective of their caste, creed, religion, sex, gender, they can do whatever, they will have the freedom to lead a life of their own choice. So that is the kind of a new society. And all opportunities would be made available to the individuals in this new constitution. So that is what the new constitution would offer and bring about a social transformation. And this draft constitution, therefore, that the constitution that has been prepared for India, therefore, has two chapters which make it radically different from the other constitution, radically different from the India Act formulated by the British rulers. Then number one, the fundamental rights chapter. Number two, the directive principles chapter. And the preamble effectively reflects all the core philosophy of the constitution. And this was prepared. And in the preparation, in formulation of these ideas, Ambedkar played a very important role. It was through his intervention that they acquired a radical character. Now, Ambedkar also, during the even before the Constituent Assembly was elected, and when he was well aware that freedom was around the corner, he also thought about the future of this country, and he came out with States and Minorities, the document called States and Minorities. And in States and Minorities, he makes it very clear that at least legally every individual should be made equal, and that will itself be a very radical change in India. And that is what he wanted. And therefore, in the light of all these developments, they debated. And constitution survived because when ideas clash, when the different interests are represented effectively, and they are allowed to clash, and it is in the common interest that they arrive at a consensus and prepare the document, then the constitution becomes more effective and it strikes roots in the country. And that is what the Indian Constituent Assembly has done. They have allowed these ideas to clash, and finally they prepared a document that represents the will of the people. And that's why the Constitution, as written in the preamble, it has become we the people has come into life, became effective because of all these developments. So two points I want to elaborate and then conclude. In the right to equality section in the fundamental rights is different from what rights equal rights guaranteed in the other constitution. In the case of the Indian Constitution, right to equality is defined in multiple ways. Sorry. In the case of the Indian Constitution, it says that we are all equal before the law. Not satisfied with that, then it takes makes another state. All people will be protected equally. And then it says, where all this equality, implications of this. We are equal with respect to access of the public places. That is elaborated. And it prohibits titles. So like that, it elaborates and makes right to equality a very radically different from what is promised in most of the other constitution. It offers equal opportunities in employment. It offers equal opportunity in education. So all these are elaborated. And then the right to reservation was also enshrined in this constitution, so that in the right to equality chapter, so that it becomes more effective and more meaningful. So these are, the various dimensions. In order to, and Ambedkar knew very clearly that while we may get equality in the political realm, without equality in social and economic realm, this itself has no meaning. And therefore, the elaborate the kind of responsibilities that the state has in order to implement the fundamental rights. And it contains series of, suggests series of measures that the state is expected to do. Normally, in many constitutions, state is limited. But in the case of Indian Constitution, the state is not only limited, but it also has been given a positive responsibility. It is expected to implement the policy so that, India, these inequalities in social life, economic life can be eradicated. So this is, this content has been infused into the constitution because we had a long history of struggle against the colonial rulers, long history of struggle against inequalities within this country. The struggle for independence was not merely a struggle against the colonial rulers. It was simultaneously a struggle for freedom from hunger and freedom from social oppression and economic inequalities. And therefore, all these dimensions were adequately represented in the Indian Constitution. So the Constitution has become more meaningful and has acquired a new character. On the one hand, it is a document that brings about social revolution. On the other hand, it offers a program to emancipate people from oppression so that they can live as individuals with dignity and self-respect. That is the content of the Indian Constitution. Today we are all trying to safeguard the Constitution because the under the liberalization regime, governments want to hand over everything to the private sector, leave everything to the private sector, so that some people can make profit and others would suffer as a consequence. And they all find that this is an obstacle for that kind of a privatization, free privatization of everything, so that they can distribute everything, give everything on in a plate to the corporate sector. So it is becoming an obstacle. So the reason why they want to, time and again, they talk about the amendment to the Constitution. Today, if people are protecting it, is because the Constitution very categorically says that it must not only establish equality in political realm, but also in socio-economic realm. And without those provisions, perhaps today, many oppressed communities will not be able to grow into full-fledged citizens of this country. So that is the reason why people want to safeguard the Constitution. I think the current day Indian politics is marked by this conflict between these two different groups, the two different ideas, two different ideologies. One group which wants the state to have monopolistic power and you transfer all the resources to the corporate sector. And there is the other group which wants the fundamental rights and directive principles to be implemented so that people of this country can also benefit and grow into full-fledged citizens. They also can live with dignity and self-respect. So this is, the conflict in the present day Indian politics. After the liberalization, the conflict has become very sharp. And one of the reasons why we must debate more and more, talk about the Constitution and talk to the people about the importance of this Constitution, tell them how it has evolved. And only when they understand it fully, they will be able to stand up and protect this Constitution. This is, therefore, I have chosen this topic for today's presentation. I am very happy that you have given me the opportunity to share these few ideas today in this meeting. And I am. I also want to state it very categorically that we should continue this effort in future, and in order to protect the Constitution and uphold the Constitution. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Sir, thank you, sir.
Sir, I have a question, sir.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, 1 minute, 1 minute. Sir, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I think you have a better idea of elaboration of the before of constitution making historical journey you told very well. Thank you very much, sir. I open to question.
Sir, in recent past, there has been
Sir,
certain.
please let your name and.
I am Mahendra Kumar Anand from Jaipur, Rajasthan.
Yeah.
I have just completed MA in Dr. Ambedkar Thought from Mahu University of B.R. Ambedkar University of Social Sciences. So there, my dissertation topic was on Ambedkar's role on constitution making. So, sir, recently there has been a large number of social media reports, newspaper reports that B.N. Rao played a more important role than Dr. Ambedkar. So, how should we handle this situation, sir? Kindly guide us.
Yeah, see, B.N. Rao may have prepared a draft copy for everyone to discuss. But B.N. Rao has not prepared it without guidance from the Constituent Assembly. See, this is what we have to realize, that the constitution, after all, is not a lawyer's, constituent assembly wasn't a lawyer's paradise. It consisted of eminent people who represented the people of this country, and people who fought for the rights of this country, rights of the people of this country, particularly the oppressed community. And they had a very clear vision. They had a very clear vision about, the kind of future, the direction in which India should evolve. So they presented that vision in the constitution, and that is what they have asked B.N. Rao to keep in mind. So it is within that mandate B.N. Rao has written. B.N. Rao cannot write on his own. And after all, whatever he has written was not finally accepted in toto by the Constituent Assembly. Each article, each provision was thoroughly debated, and the drafting committee looked at it. And after the drafting committee finalized it, the drafting committee's the model prepared by the drafting committee was taken up by the Constituent Assembly, and each article was debated by the Constituent Assembly and finalized only after a thorough discussion by the Constituent Assembly. So we know how each provision was debated by the Constituent Assembly. We all must encourage people to read, to see this Samvidhan, the documentaries prepared by Sham Benegal on the making of the Indian Constitution. And that clearly shows, how they debated it. Ultimately, it is this vision which is reflected in the Constitution. You can't simply say that one individual sat there and prepared everything, gave it, and the Constituent Assembly signed and placed it before the people of this country. That is incorrect. These were the people who were not merely silent spectators. They were, after all, people who struggled for decades together. They spent years in jail, and they had a desire to transform this country into a democratic nation. So it is with that desire, they all looked at the draft, they corrected it, they changed it, they transformed it, they completely threw out the old and brought out something new. It is without, this debate by the Constituent Assembly, the Constitution would not have gained the acceptance of millions of people in this country. I think that role, if we undermine, that involvement by the Constituent Assembly, if we undermine, and then obviously, we would be failing in our duties, that the Constitution, after all, reflected the will of the people. So that is how I think we must categorically explain. He was a master. He was asked to draft, and he drafted what people wanted him to draft. If everyone wanted a presidential form, he would have come out with a draft for a presidential form. But people wanted him to draft a particular model. He did it. And later it was all looked at and approved by the Constituent Assembly. And members have not merely looked at the prose of the language, the prose of the the draft. They looked at the content and debated on the content and tried to find out whether it really fulfills the aspirations of the people or not. It is up to the expectations of the people of Din or not. That was the touchstone. And without, that kind of a reflection by the people, I don't think the Constitution would have become a live document.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, anybody is there?
Yeah.
Hello. If nobody is there, I think we will conclude. Hello.
So, sir, can I ask one more question?
Please.
Yeah, please.
Sir, when India got independence, it was a sort of welfare state for the citizens. Education was free, hospital health was free, and all that. But in the last decade or so, we find India has changed from welfare state to some capitalist state under the same constitution, sir.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why they find that there is a tension between the liberalization philosophy and the constitution, and therefore they want the constitution to be rewritten. You are right, that
What
I
is the
think,
remedy, sir?
the remedy is
But
that
we are the sufferers. Our people are sufferers of that change.
we are sufferers because we are no longer accepted as citizens. See, if today the voters are being disenfranchised, it is because you have a voting right and therefore you are asking for your rights. And therefore the best thing is to eliminate your voting right so that you don't ask these inconvenient questions to the rulers. So that is why they want to eliminate you, disenfranchise people. So disenfranchisement in political sphere, they think, allows you to denies you the right to ask for a share in the wealth of this country. So that is what the disenfranchisement is all about. We should know that. And we should also offer a very serious critique of the liberalization process time and again. I would say narrate a very important incident. The government could purchase oil at a very cheap price from Russia, and they have not imported it from Russia for the benefit of the people of this country. The government has not imported. The government has authorized Reliance to import the crude oil from Russia. Now, what has Reliance done to this? Reliance purchased the oil from Russia, processed it, sold it for a better price to in Africa. So Reliance has made a profit. Today, America punishes us and Reliance derives all the benefits. I am not justifying what America has decided because America has no right to decide what India should do or should not do. But the thing is, that the government allows its authority to help one individual to become rich at the cost of the others. Now we suffer both ways. Number one, we don't get that cheaper oil. Number two, we are also, as a consequence, now facing the tariffs. By imposing this tariff on the pharmaceutical companies, today a large number of people in Hyderabad depend on eke out a living on by working in the pharmaceutical company. They lose their jobs. What will happen to their future? So I think, we should now systematically offer a critique. While the framers of the constitutions were very clear that the country belongs to the people of this people, and that it is they who must get benefits from the future developments. So they are the shareholders, and they get benefits from the economic development of this country. That is the essence of the Indian constitution. Today we are not recognized as citizens, we are not recognized as shareholders. We are seen as some kind of a people who are encroaching into the rights of the corporate sector. So we are always seen as a threat to their own privileges, and therefore they try to eliminate us. So we must, I think, uphold the spirit of the constitution, popularize it, and use this as a weapon in order to put some pressure on the government. That is the option available to us.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I think now you have to conclude. Thanks to all you attended in the lecture series, and I very much thankful to Professor Kodan Ramgar. I think we before this also Kodan Ram and our friends, our elders are thinking this program should continue. Like that in future, his idea also should continue. This lecture and education on constitution should be good further and further. Thank you. I think we will wish to do that. But after 26 January, we have to have a serious program on constitution. I think it would be national level campaign, whatever we want. we have to decide whatever situation happening on those days. We can go further. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thanks to all.
Thanks.